I've always loved video games that incentivize and encourage exploration and curiosity. Typically, this manifests in well-hidden collectibles or power-ups, but sometimes it's just a dumb, funny little thing that ultimately does nothing, aside from giving you a little laugh and proving that you spent the extra time to find it. I'm talking about Easter eggs, you know, little secrets that you can super easily miss, that are there to remind you that the developers like to have a little fun when designing their games. It's always nice to find these things. It almost feels like a thank you note to the person playing the game. It adds a layer of jovial familiarity between the game and the player. It's kinda like a secret handshake or an inside joke. Sometimes I wonder just how many Easter eggs are still out there that only the developers are aware of, and I like to imagine that some days, you know, they're just drinking coffee at their desk going, alright, any day now, they're gonna find my kid's drawing of the alligator with a banana on his head on the side of the vending machine in Blaine County. It can be a little tricky to determine what does and doesn't count as an Easter egg, and are they still Easter eggs if they're really easy to find and most people have seen them? And then again, does that distinction really matter? I mean, it's video games, it's fun. So in the name of fun, I'm gonna take a look at some random Easter eggs that may or may not count as Easter eggs depending on who you're talking to. Easter eggs have been a part of video games for a very long time, so it's only natural that you'd find them in a game like the OG Super Mario Bros. I remember when I would beat a level and sometimes I would get fireworks. Back then, I could never figure out what specifically triggered this, I just knew it had something to do with the timer. Turns out it's all about that last number. If it's a 1, 3, or a 6, you get fireworks. I know that because I've been binging Summoning Salt, and apparently speedrunners go out of their way to avoid getting those numbers because the fireworks actually slow them down. Mario has had a very consistent history with Easter eggs, but some are way more well hidden than others. Mario Kart 64, if you stay at the race results screen and let the song loop 64 times, it actually adds an additional piano solo that isn't there normally. I remember reading about that on the internet when I was like 10. I thought they were lying, but no, I actually did it, and sure enough, it was real. I wonder who the first person to find this was. I mean, how many people were sitting on the race results screen of Mario Kart 64 for 300 years? There's a similar Easter egg in Luigi's Mansion, where if you leave it on the tutorial screen long enough, you hear a rendition of Totaka's theme. Of course, Totaka's theme is its own can of worms. You could fill a 20-minute video with that alone. References are one of the most common types of Easter eggs, and sometimes they are the most fun ones to find because only some people will actually recognize them out of the already limited number of people who even found them in the first place. There are only 2 people who noticed the Discoon Easter egg in the Mario movie, me and some guy on Reddit. Mario Odyssey, I can still remember when I saw the castle courtyard from Mario 64. That was a big deal. Still can't read that text though. But it definitely says L is real, trust me. Mario 64 actually has murals of an 8-bit Mario and Bowser fighting on these pillars right before the final boss fight. Mario's RPG escapades have more than their fair share of secrets. Mario RPG let you become an 8-bit Mario, which plays the theme song and everything. Not only was this brought back in the remake, but it also showed up in Thousand Year Door. That game is just full of Easter eggs, one of my favorites being Grodus' computer, which does the Famicom disk startup. That's right, this master genius who tried to conquer the world does everything on a Famicom disk system. Speaking of which, did you know that the GameCube's menu theme is actually a very slowed down version of the Famicom disk startup? You can talk to a kid in Petalburg who tells you all about this great video game called Fire Emblem. Never heard of it. Fort Francis in Super Paper Mario is kinda like a fan-servicey treasure trove of Easter eggs with all kinds of memorabilia from the previous titles and even in-universe spoofs on real TV shows and movies. This is what Nintendo thinks Paper Mario fans look like, but joke's on them, I'm not a lizard. And I am also way more fat. Rareware used to love Easter eggs. There would be all kinds of cameos that only people who were familiar with Rare's other work would recognize. Conker's Bad Fur Day, you could see Banjo's severed head mounted over the mantelpiece in the bar. Banjo-Kazooie has literal Easter eggs in the form of the stop and swap items, which require you to input the longest string of words in the entire world on the sandcastle floor in Treasure Trove Cove. Even though they were initially intended to unlock goodies in Banjo-Tooie, the functionality never saw the light of day, so now they're more of a status symbol than anything else. So if you have a Banjo-Kazooie cartridge and the eggs are already unlocked, you know that the guy who played it before you was a real fan. Banjo-Tooie had Captain Black-Eye, who was the original antagonist of Project Dream, and even had the character Saberman, which is a character from the series Saberman that I've never heard of before Banjo-Tooie. There's also that part where Kazooie asks the aliens in Jolly Roger Lagoon if any of them are named Elvis, which of course is a reference to Perfect Dark. Speaking of which, Perfect Dark hid a bunch of cheese everywhere. I remember stumbling upon a cheese wedge myself a long time ago and being completely baffled as to why an extremely high-tech cyberpunk future with aliens and shit has some dude running around leaving cheese everywhere. Is it a sign? Is it a calling card? What does it mean? For those of you who've seen my reviewing every Mario game series, you may remember that I've been debating about what constitutes a Mario appearance in a game, since the goal was to play every game where Mario shows up with very few exceptions. I played a Japan-only Tamagotchi game which features Mario and Wario-themed Tamagotchi, but not Donkey Kong Country 3, where Wrinkly Kong can be seen playing Super Mario 64. Although Mario isn't technically on the screen. But that's a problem for future me when I decide to finish episode 6. Tears of the Kingdom has a bunch of outfits referencing the older titles. People who only started playing Zelda when Breath of the Wild came out might not recognize a lot of this stuff, but if you've been playing for a while, it's always a special moment when you find one of these. The Zelda series is full of references to other games. In Majora's Mask, some people have noticed that the mask screen may actually contain a Star Fox reference. It could be a coincidence, but it's a very funny one. But one thing that is definitely intentional is the happy mask salesman with a Mario mask on his backpack. Ocarina of Time, you have the classic Mario portraits in Hyrule Castle. This is super easy to miss, especially since you're only in this room for like 3 seconds in the beginning of the game and then never again. The 3DS remake replaced it with Mario blocks, which is almost even better. Metal Gear. When you're playing a Metal Gear game, every day is Easter. I feel like there's always a new little thing that I find out every single time I play any of these titles. There are Easter eggs around every corner of these games, and sometimes when they put their stuff on Nintendo platforms, they would actually put Yoshi and Mario toys all over the place. And even beyond that, Metal Gear Solid 4 has soundtracks from the old games playing on an iPod, including the Brawl version of Theme of Love, which sounds like something that would play in a Pirates of the Caribbean film. You know what's funny? Brawl was technically the first time Metal Gear Gecko appeared in a video game because it came out half a year before MGS4. You learn something new every day. Last of Us Part 2 has a really goofy Easter egg where you can find a trading card with the terrifying supervillain Dr. Uckman, a man so evil that he doesn't even use the word fun. He cancels development on multiplayer games just to get a laugh. He is the greatest evil genius of all time. And speaking of supervillains, Earthworm Jim 3D has this stupid Easter egg where you can see Evil the Cat on the giant records in the Boogie Nights level. From what I understand, they actually falsely advertised him as an enemy that you can face off against in the game, and I guess this was just an excuse for them to say, yeah, he's in the game. We totally didn't just flat out lie just to sell you a copy of Earthworm Jim 3D. Yeah, before Rockstar hit their stride, they were out here publishing Earthworm Jim 3D. Of course, when you end up making game worlds as big as GTA, you had the perfect opportunity to hide a bunch of stuff in there, like the beating heart in the Statue of Liberty, or spaceships in GTA 5. One of my favorite Easter eggs is in Doom 2016, where you can find secret areas within the campaign levels where the game 180s into classic Doom, complete with those old graphics and all. I remember discovering one of these by accident. It blew my mind. Going from those gnarly id Tech graphics back to the camera-facing sprites of old, that was so funny. Borderlands. Now this is a series that I feel like I kinda grew out of, but there was one really cool Easter egg in the pre-sequel where you can actually go up into the elevator shaft, and it puts you into this big Mario-looking map with all these gold bricks lying around and a bunch of secret treasures. It kinda blew my mind to see a Mario level in a first-person shooter of all things. And it's a good fit for this game since there's a lot more platforming than usual due to the low gravity. There are tons of Easter eggs out there that I haven't mentioned, and there may be just as many if not more that haven't been discovered at all yet. But this is a good sample size of ones that stuck out to me. What's your favorite Easter egg? And how many of you found the nude code for Samus in Metroid Dread? I'm surprised Nintendo still hasn't patched it out.